Hey class, here is lecture 5 for your church history course. We're going to overview 3 topics today that is going to be covered in a little more detail in your reading for this week. And that is, we're going to talk briefly about the Church of England. We're going to talk about the Catholic Counter-Reformation or the Catholic Reformation, however you want to define that. And we're also going to talk about some of the religious wars and instabilities in Europe after the Reformation had kind of cooled. So, first of all, let's begin with the Church of England. I left this out of last week's lecture on purpose because it's a little bit more complicated than other Reformation timelines. This is because it's very intermingled with the king and monarchies and things like that. Not to say that like Luther and Zwingli didn't have a lot of interaction with the state, but you'll find out when you're reading that the Church of England is much more stop go kind of suffering from an identity crisis, if you will. Not to be like disrespectful or anything, but you'll kind of get that gist. So basically, that starts with King Henry VIII, who I'm sure you're at least somewhat familiar with, and he was a stalwart supporter of the Catholic Church. He even wrote a tract against Martin Luther, which the Pope said, "Oh, you're the greatest, we love you. I guess, what have you done for me lately," kind of things. So, obviously, Henry VIII couldn't get an heir out of one of his many wives, and so he needed to divorce her to get another wife. And, even today that still goes against Catholic dogma. So, Henry VIII broke with the Catholic Church, and then it's kind of just this show all the way down to the next 4 heirs, whether it's Edward, his son, who was a Protestant king, Mary, who was also related, who was a Catholic, in favor of Catholics, or Elizabeth, who was in favor of Protestants. And it's just down the line, like one king will support the Catholic Church, the next one will support the Protestant Church, and this will bring rise to, later on with like the Puritans and Oliver Cromwell and things like that, the more fuller idea of Anglicanism, the Church of England, and things like that. Pretty interesting storyline if you can hash through all of the blood and treachery and things like that. Next, the Catholic Counter-Reformation or Catholic Reformation. There's kind of a debate as to what to call it, but basically this was a direct response to the Protestant Reformation. The question was never, does the church need to be reformed or doesn't it? The answer was always yes, it's in need of reform. There might be issues that are fine in some areas. There might be vibrant communities that have no problems in like France or whatever. But by and large, everyone during this time says, we need to figure something out. The difference is, Protestants say, well, the issue is theology. Theology is broken. We need to fix it. We need to go back to the sources, ad fontes, that kind of thing. Catholics in their Reformation say, no, we don't think it's the theology. The theology's fine. It's been passed down from person to person to person, just like apostolic succession said. Rather, it's the moral laxity that's the problem. So we're going to create orders that emphasize high moral standards, that emphasize piety, that emphasize obedience. And you'll see this in a lot of the Catholic orders that come out of the Catholic Reformation. They both are trying to solve the problem, and they both had success, and they both had failures. So I hope that the reading on the Catholic Counter-Reformation proves helpful in understanding what the Catholics were thinking. Because it's kind of easy to blackball people, and think that they were stupid or whatever. But if you come at it and try and see their perspective and why they're doing what they're doing, you're a little more gracious in your perspectives. Lastly, in the periods, in the 50, 60, 100 years following the Reformation, Europe is plunged into many bloody religious wars. Some of these wars were just, you know, for, just under the guise of religiosity. They were really political wars. Some of them were religious wars. The one that's pointed to most is usually the 30 Years' War between a lot of different European states and city-states and things like that. But, mostly between Protestants and Catholics. And with this breakdown of they're not able to discuss, they're not able to communicate with each other, it just kind of breaks down into a which nation can fight better kind of thing. And this will be important for later lectures because rationalists and freethinkers in the Enlightenment period are going to point to the religious wars and say, well, why would we go back to that? That's broken. Why would we go back to religiosity of Catholics and Protestants in the Reformation? Because all that leads to is bloodshed and instability. So we'll get to that in the next couple lectures, but there's the 3 points for you to kind of help you understand lecture 5, Church of England, its formation, Catholic Counter-Reformation, why they did what they did, and the religious wars that were a direct byproduct of the instability of the Reformations. Let me know if you guys have any questions, and I'll be around. Thanks.